The silence hit first. Captain Elena Vasquez stood on the bridge of the Prometheus Ascendant, watching the stars through the massive viewing screen. She had been a ship captain for 20 years, but nothing prepared her for the moment when every system died at once. The soft hum of the engines stopped. The glow of control panels went dark. Even the gentle whoosh of air circulation ceased. 50,000 colonists all asleep in their cryopods, depending on her to get them to their new home. Now they were all going to die in the emptiness of space. What happened? She asked, but her voice sounded too loud in the sudden quiet. Chief Engineer Marcus Chen was already moving, his hands flying over a portable diagnostic tablet that still had battery power. His face was lit by the pale blue glow of the screen. Sweat formed on his forehead despite the temperature dropping rapidly around them. "Everything is offline," Marcus said. His voice was steady, but Elena could hear the fear underneath. "Main power, backup systems, even the emergency batteries. It is like something just reached in and switched us off." Elena looked at the tactical officer, Lieutenant James Park. He was staring at his dead console with wide eyes. "The alien ship," James said quietly. "Right before we lost power, I saw a pulse of energy come from it. Then everything went black, the alien ship." Elena remembered it clearly. They had detected it an hour ago. A massive vessel that was twice the size of the Prometheus Ascendant. The design was unlike anything in human records. Sharp angles, dark metal that seemed to absorb light, and strange symbols glowing along its hull. They had tried to make contact, sending greetings in 100 languages and mathematical sequences. The response had been that pulse of energy. And now they were dead in space. "How long do we have?" Elena asked. Marcus checked his tablet. "Life support is running on chemical backups. Maybe 6 hours of breathable air. Less if we cannot get circulation working again. Temperature will drop below freezing in 4 hours. He paused, scrolling through data. "The cryopods have their own power cells. They will keep the colonists frozen for about 72 hours. But after that, he did not need to finish." Elena understood. The pods would fail and 50,000 people would die in their sleep. At least they would not know what happened. The crew of 200 would not be so lucky. They would freeze or suffocate, watching the air gauges count down to 0. "Can we fix it?" Elena asked. "Can we restore power?" Marcus shook his head. "Whatever hit us, it was not just an electromagnetic pulse. It did something to the molecular structure of our power systems. The fusion reactor is intact, but it will not start. The battery cells are physically fine, but they are not holding a charge. It is like the energy just disappeared." Elena felt her chest tighten. She had trained for emergencies. Hull breaches, reactor failures, navigational errors. But no one trained for this. Complete system death with no way to restore power. She looked around the bridge at her crew. They were all watching her, waiting for orders, waiting for her to fix this. "Options," she said firmly. "I want every possible option, no matter how crazy." Dr. Yuki Tanaka spoke up from the science station. She was a small woman with silver hair, and she had been studying the sensor data on her own portable unit. "Captain, there is something you need to see. Before we lost power, the sensors detected unusual readings from the region ahead of us." She transferred the data to a shared screen that still had battery power. Elena saw a spectacular image of swirling gas clouds bright with newborn stars. A stellar nursery where suns were being born from collapsing matter. "We are drifting," Yuki explained. "Our last velocity before shutdown was carrying us toward this region. I calculated our trajectory. In about 30 hours, we will enter the outer edge of the nursery. That will not help us," James said. "We will be dead long before then." "Wait," Marcus interrupted. He was staring at the image with new intensity. "Yuki, are those planetary bodies in there?" Yuki zoomed in on the image. Deep within the swirling clouds of gas and radiation, there were dark spots, rocks and debris pulled together by gravity, forming the building blocks of planets. Some were small, just asteroids, but one was larger, maybe half the size of Earth. "It is a rogue planet," Yuki said, "forming in the chaos of the stellar nursery. It has no star to orbit, just drifting through space." Marcus was already calculating on his tablet. "If we use the chemical thrusters, we still have fuel for that. They do not need main power. We could adjust our course. Maybe crash land on that planet." "Crash land?" James stood up from his station. "That would destroy the ship. Everyone would die." "Everyone is going to die anyway," Marcus shot back. "At least this way, some might survive. The cryopods are built to withstand tremendous impacts. If we angle the ship correctly, Protect the pod bays with the rest of the hull. Maybe 20 or 30% survive the crash. Elena felt sick. 20 or 30% of 50,000 was still only 15,000 people at best. And the 200 crew members on the bridge and engineering sections? They would be crushed on impact. But Marcus was right. It was better than zero. What about the radiation? Elena asked. A stellar nursery is not a safe place. The radiation levels must be extreme. Yuki nodded. Yes, but the rogue planet is on the outer edge. The radiation is high but not instantly fatal. The ship's hull plating would provide some protection, at least initially. And if there is volcanic activity, the colonists could shelter underground. Elena closed her eyes. Command decisions were supposed to be clear. You weighed the options and chose the best one. But this was not a choice between good and bad. This was a choice between certain death and probable death. She thought about the families in those cryopods. Children, elderly, people who had given up everything for a chance at a new life. She thought about her crew, loyal and brave, who would die to give others a chance. Marcus, how long to set up the thruster burn? She asked. 2 hours, he said. Maybe less if we work fast. Do it. Elena's voice was firm. James, I want you to program the navigation computer to guide us in. Use whatever battery power is left. Yuki, calculate the best angle of approach. I want the cryo bay section to hit first, with everything else absorbing the impact. Captain, James said quietly, we will not survive this. I know, Elena said. She looked at each of them in turn. But they will, some of them, and that is enough. The next 2 hours passed in frantic activity. Marcus and his engineering team worked in the darkness, using portable lights to navigate the ship. They manually connected fuel lines to the chemical thrusters, systems that were meant only for minor adjustments, not major course changes. Every movement was careful. One mistake and the fuel could ignite, killing them all before they even had a chance to try the landing. Elena stayed on the bridge, watching their drift toward the stellar nursery. The alien ship had not followed them. Maybe it thought they were already dead. Maybe it did not care. Either way, humanity was on its own. Yuki brought her the final calculations. The impact will be severe, Captain. Even with the best angle, we are looking at forces of over 100 Gs. The cryopods can handle it, but barely. The ship will break apart. What about the planet itself? Elena asked. What will we find there? Yuki hesitated. The sensors detected volcanic activity. Extreme geological instability. The atmosphere is thin but breathable. Mostly nitrogen and oxygen, probably from outgassing. Temperature swings from freezing at night to boiling during the day. It is not a place where humans should live. But we can survive there? For a while, Yuki admitted. If we have shelter. If we have supplies. The ship's cargo holds contain everything for a colony. Construction equipment, food processors, medical supplies. If enough survives the crash, Elena nodded. Then we make it work. We have to. Marcus came to the bridge 3 hours later, covered in grease and exhausted. Thrusters are ready, Captain. We have one shot at this. If we miss the planet, we will drift into the heart of the nursery and the radiation will cook us. I trust you, Marcus, Elena said. She opened the ship-wide communication channel. Normally it would reach every section of the massive colony ship, but now it only worked on battery-powered speakers in a few key areas. The crew would hear her. The colonists, frozen in their pods, would not. This is Captain Vasquez, she began. Her voice echoed in the empty corridors. We have been attacked by an unknown alien force. Our ship is dead, but we are not giving up. We are going to crash land on a planet ahead of us. Most of the crew will not survive, but the colonists will. That is our mission now, not to reach our destination, but to make sure humanity survives this. I am proud to serve with all of you. See you on the other side. She closed the channel. There was nothing else to say. Marcus initiated the thruster burn. The ship shuddered as chemical rockets fired, pushing them off their original trajectory. Through the viewing screen, Elena watched the rogue planet grow larger. It was a dark, angry world. Volcanoes glowed on its surface like infected wounds. Clouds of ash swirled through the thin atmosphere. It looked like hell. 40 minutes to impact, James announced. The crew strapped themselves into emergency crash seats. Elena sat in her command chair, feeling the restraints lock across her chest. She thought about her family back on Earth. They would never know what happened to her. The Prometheus ascendant would simply disappear, lost in the vast emptiness of space. 30 minutes, James said. The ship began to shake as it entered the planet's thin atmosphere. Friction heated the hull. Warning lights that still had power flickered red. Elena watched the surface rush up toward them. Mountains of volcanic rock, rivers of lava, plains of ash. 15 minutes. Marcus made final adjustments, tilting the ship so the cryo bay section was angled down. The engineering section where they sat would hit last. It would crumple like paper, absorbing the impact energy. They would be crushed instantly. 5 minutes, James whispered. Elena reached out and took Marcus's hand. He squeezed back. Yuki was crying silently. James had his eyes closed, lips moving in prayer. 1 minute. The ground filled the viewing screen. Elena could see individual rocks now, the details of the volcanic surface. The ship was screaming, metal tearing as atmospheric forces ripped at the hull. Impact in 10 seconds, James said. 987. Elena thought about the colonists. 50,000 dreams, 50,000 chances. Some would survive. They had to. 4, 3, 2. The last thing Elena saw was a mountain rushing toward them. Then the world exploded in fire and darkness, and the Prometheus ascendant, humanity's greatest achievement, became a broken ruin scattered across an alien world. But from those ruins, something new would be born. Something the aliens who destroyed them could never expect. Because humanity had one quality that transcended technology and power. When pushed to the edge of extinction, when everything was taken from them, humans did not surrender. They adapted. They survived. And they got angry. The first sound Marcus Chen heard was screaming. He opened his eyes and immediately wished he had not. Pain shot through his entire body. His left arm was bent at a wrong angle. Blood dripped into his eyes from a cut on his forehead. Around him, the bridge was a twisted wreck of metal and shattered screens. Emergency lights cast everything in a hellish red glow. "Captain?" He called out, his voice weak, no answer. He turned his head, fighting through waves of dizziness. The command chair was crushed flat. Nothing could have survived that. Captain Vasquez was gone. Marcus unbuckled himself with his one working hand and fell to the floor. The ship was tilted at a crazy angle. Gravity felt strange here, lighter than Earth but heavy enough to make moving painful. He crawled toward the exit, past James Park's body slumped over his console, past Yuki Tanaka, who was pinned under a fallen support beam, her eyes staring at nothing. The bridge crew was dead, all of them, just like they had known would happen. Marcus made it to the corridor and pulled himself up using the wall. The ship groaned around him, metal settling after the catastrophic impact. He had to get to the cryo bay. Had to see if anyone survived. The walk took an hour. Every step was agony. Marcus passed bodies of crew members who had not made it to crash positions in time. Some sections of the ship were completely destroyed, forcing him to climb through twisted wreckage. Other sections were on fire, chemical fires that burned without much oxygen, producing toxic smoke. When he finally reached the cryo bay, he found others already there. Engineering crew mostly, the ones who had been closest to this section. They were working frantically, using manual releases to open the cryopods. How many? Marcus asked a young engineer named Sarah Kim. She looked up, her face streaked with tears. Maybe 12,000. The others? She pointed to the far side of the bay where pods had been crushed flat or torn open by the impact. 12,000 out of 50,000, 24% survival rate. Better than Marcus had calculated, but still 38,000 dead. Families destroyed, children killed before they even woke up. The survivors began emerging from their pods confused and terrified. They had gone to sleep on a functioning colony ship, expecting to wake up at their new home. Instead, they woke in a crashed wreck on an alien world, their families and friends dead around them. Marcus organized the engineers. Get them out of the ship. Set up an emergency camp outside. We need to inventory what survived. Food, water, medical supplies, tools, everything. Over the next 3 days, a grim picture emerged. The crash had destroyed most of the heavy equipment. The massive construction vehicles that were supposed to build their colony were crushed. The agricultural processors that would have created food from local resources were gone. They had medical supplies for maybe 6 months. Food for less than that, even with strict rationing, but they were alive. And the planet, as harsh as it was not immediately trying to kill them. Marcus stood outside the wreck of the Prometheus Ascendant and looked at their new world. The sky was a dark purple, stained by volcanic ash. The ground was black rock, still warm from ancient lava flows. In the distance, 3 volcanoes pumped smoke into the thin atmosphere. The air smelled like sulfur and burned metal. The temperature was bearable during the day but dropped dangerously low at night. They had named the crash site Haven, though it was anything but. The colonists set up shelters made from ship panels. They rationed food and water. Medical teams worked around the clock treating injuries, and everyone asked the same question: what now? Dr. Yuki Tanaka had survived. She had been in the science section, which had been partially protected during the crash. Marcus found her 3 days after landing, emerging from the wreck with several portable lab units and a look of fierce determination. "I found something," she said without greeting. She was limping, one leg wrapped in a medical brace. "In the crash, we broke through the planet's crust. Our hull plating dug deep into the ground. And Marcus, you need to see what is down there." She led him to a section where the ship had torn open the planet's surface like a knife through skin. Deep cracks ran through the black rock, and from those cracks came a strange blue light. "What is that?" Marcus asked. Yuki handed him a scanner. "Look at the energy readings. These formations should not exist. The physics do not make sense." Marcus studied the display. The readings were incredible. Energy density off the scale, perfect quantum coherence, 0-point fluctuations that suggested these rocks were tapping into the fundamental energy of the universe itself. "They are crystals," Yuki explained, "formed by the unique conditions of the stellar nursery. When this planet was forming, it was bathed in radiation from newborn stars. Heavy elements collapsed under extreme gravity, and somehow, in that perfect storm of energy and matter, these formed." She reached down and carefully extracted a crystal from the rock. It was about the size of her fist, glowing with internal blue light. It felt warm to the touch. "This single crystal contains enough energy to power our entire settlement for a year," Yuki said. "Maybe more. And Marcus, there are millions of them down there, billions. The entire planetary core might be made of this material." Marcus stared at the crystal. An idea was forming in his mind. A crazy, desperate idea. "Can we use it? Can we build something with this?" "I do not know," Yuki admitted. "The technology required would be far beyond anything we brought with us. And it might be dangerous. Early tests show the crystals are stable, but if we push them too hard, then we learn," Marcus said firmly. "We experiment, we adapt. Because, Yuki, we are not going to survive here on food rations and hope. This world is hell. The only way we make it is if we become stronger, smarter, better than we were." Word of the discovery spread through the settlement. Some people were excited. Others were afraid. But everyone understood that the crystals represented their only real chance at survival. Marcus organized teams. Engineers worked on extracting the crystals safely. Scientists studied their properties. They started small, using tiny crystal fragments to power lights and heaters. The crystals worked better than any battery they had ever seen. A piece smaller than a fingernail could power a shelter for days. Then they got more ambitious. Marcus designed a crystal-powered generator that could produce electricity for the entire settlement. It took 3 weeks to build, using salvaged parts from the ship. The first time they powered it on, the crystal glowed so bright it hurt to look at. Energy poured out in waves, more than enough for their needs. But that first success also brought the first death. An engineer named Robert Torres tried to modify the generator without proper shielding. The crystal overloaded, releasing all its stored energy in an instant. The explosion vaporized Robert and destroyed half the generator. 3 others were badly burned. "We have to be more careful," Yuki said at the memorial service. They had started holding these every week, honoring those who died in the experiments. "These crystals are powerful, but they are not toys. We need proper safety protocols, better shielding, more testing." But Marcus knew they did not have time for slow, careful progress, because 3 months after the crash, they received a message. It came through the ship's partially functional communications array. Someone had managed to restore power to the receivers using crystal energy. The message was in a language they did not recognize, but the ship's computer could translate. "This is Warlord Kexthun of the Kexthor Collective. We detected this planet's resources. We will arrive in 9 months to harvest what we need. Any biological contamination will be eliminated. Do not attempt to resist." The message played on repeat for an hour before someone found the off switch. Marcus stood in the communications room feeling cold despite the heaters running. "They are coming back," Sarah Kim said quietly. The ones who killed us, Marcus nodded. The Kexthor, the aliens who had destroyed the Prometheus Ascendant so casually. Now they were coming here to take the crystals and kill any humans who got in the way. 9 months, Marcus said. We have 9 months to build something that can fight them. Or we all die. That night he called a meeting of everyone who had survived. 12,000 faces looked at him in the dim crystal light. Families huddled together. Children clung to parents. They had already lost so much. You all heard the message, Marcus began. He stood on a platform made from ship debris, elevated so everyone could see him. The Kexthor are coming. They destroyed our ship. They killed 38,000 of us. And in 9 months they want to finish the job. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Fear, anger, desperation. We can try to run, Marcus continued. Take what supplies we have and hide on the other side of the planet. Maybe they will not find us. Maybe we can survive in the wilderness until they leave. He paused, looking at the faces watching him. Or we can fight. The murmurs grew louder. Someone shouted, Fight with what? We have no weapons, no ships, nothing. Marcus held up a crystal. Its blue light cast shadows across the crowd. We have these. We have our intelligence. We have our anger at what they did to us. And we have 9 months to turn this hell into a fortress. To build weapons that will make the Kexthor regret they ever found us. They are an empire, someone else called out. They have technology thousands of years beyond ours. How can we possibly fight them? Because we have to, Marcus said simply. Because if we run, we die. If we hide, we die. The only chance we have is to become something they do not expect. Something strong enough to make them bleed. He looked across the crowd. Captain Vasquez gave her life to get us here. 200 crew members died in the crash. 38,000 colonists did not wake up. We owe it to them to survive. More than that, we owe it to them to make the Kexthor pay. The crowd was silent now, listening. I am not going to lie to you, Marcus said. The next 9 months will be the hardest of our lives. We will work until we collapse. We will take risks that might kill us. Some of us will not make it. But at the end of those 9 months, when the Kexthor arrive expecting to find helpless humans waiting to die, they are going to find something very different. He held the crystal high. We are going to build weapons from these crystals, weapons powerful enough to crack their ships open. We are going to dig into this planet and make it a fortress. And when they come, we are going to show them what happens when you try to exterminate humanity. Someone started clapping, then another, then more, until the entire crowd was applauding, cheering, shouting their defiance at the purple sky. Marcus felt something shift in that moment. They were no longer refugees mourning their dead. They were survivors preparing for war. That night, they began the real work. Engineers drew up plans for crystal-powered weapons. Miners dug deeper into the planet's crust, harvesting more crystals. Scientists experimented with ways to amplify and focus the crystal energy. They built workshops and laboratories in caves, protecting them from the volcanic ash storms that periodically swept across the surface. They named their settlement Forge's Hope, because in the fires of this hellish world they were forging something new. Not just weapons, but a new version of humanity. One that would never again be helpless victims. And deep in the laboratories, as Yuki studied the crystals under powerful microscopes, she made another discovery. The crystals were not just energy storage devices. They were quantum computers, processing information at speeds that made human technology look primitive, and they responded to human neural patterns. It was possible, she realized, to connect human minds directly to the crystals, to create a fusion of biology and energy that would give people abilities beyond normal human limits. She showed Marcus her findings. He stared at the data for a long time. This could change us, he said. Make us something other than human. It could also save us, Yuki replied. Give us the edge we need. Marcus thought about Captain Vasquez, who had sacrificed herself so others could live. He thought about the Kexthor, who were coming to finish the extinction of humanity. He thought about the 12,000 survivors depending on him to find a way forward. Do it, he said. Start the research. We will need volunteers for testing. Yuki nodded. I will be the first volunteer. Yuki, no. It is too dangerous. She smiled sadly. Marcus, everything we are doing is dangerous, but I designed this process. If anyone should take the first risk, it should be me. He wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. So he simply squeezed her shoulder and said, Then we make sure it works. The months ahead would test them in ways they could not imagine. They would push the boundaries of science and ethics. They would transform their bodies and minds. And when the Kexthor finally arrived, they would find that humanity had indeed become something new. Something powerful enough to make even gods hesitate. Dr. Yuki Tanaka lay on the medical bed, trying not to think about what might go wrong. Around her, the makeshift laboratory hummed with crystal energy. Marcus Chen stood at the control console, his face tight with worry. Sarah Kim monitored the medical readouts. 3 other scientists waited nearby with emergency equipment, ready to shut everything down if the procedure went badly. Are you sure about this? Marcus asked one more time. Yuki nodded. The calculations are solid. The crystals respond to neural patterns. If we can create a stable interface, it will work. And if it does not work, then you learn from my failure and try again with someone else. Marcus did not like that answer, but he accepted it. They were 4 months into their preparations. 4 months of constant work, turning Forge's Hope from a refugee camp into something resembling a military base. But they still did not have a real weapon. Just theories and small-scale tests. This neural interface was their best hope for creating something that could actually hurt the Kexthor. Beginning the procedure, Marcus announced. He activated the crystal array. 6 crystals, each carefully calibrated, began to glow with increased intensity. They were arranged around Yuki's head, positioned to create a harmonic field that would interact with her brain activity. In theory, this would allow her to control crystal-powered devices with just her thoughts. In theory, Yuki felt the energy wash over her. It started as a warm tingle like static electricity. Then it grew stronger, pressing against her skull. She closed her eyes and focused on the breathing exercises she had practiced. Stay calm, let the energy in. Do not fight it. The pressure increased. It felt like her head was being squeezed. She gasped, fingers gripping the sides of the medical bed. Neural activity spiking, Sarah called out. Heart rate increasing. Blood pressure rising. Yuki, we can stop this, Marcus said. No, Yuki managed to say through clenched teeth. Keep going. I can handle it. The energy pushed deeper, not just pressing against her skull now, but somehow seeping through it. Yuki felt it touch her mind, and suddenly she was aware of things she should not be able to sense. She could feel the power flowing through the crystals around her. She could sense the electrical activity in the laboratory equipment. She could hear the quantum vibrations of matter itself. It was too much. Too much information flooding into a brain not designed to process it. Yuki screamed, shutting it down. Marcus reached for the controls. No. Yuki's eyes snapped open. They were glowing blue, the same color as the crystals. Do not stop. I understand now. I just need to... She reached out with her mind, not her hand, and touched one of the crystals. Through that connection, she could feel the others. 6 crystals, 6 points of energy, all linked together. She pulled them into synchronization, creating a stable field instead of chaotic interference. The pain stopped. The flood of information organized itself into something manageable. Yuki could still sense everything, but now it was like reading a book instead of having pages thrown in her face. The interface is stable, Sarah said, her voice filled with wonder. Neural patterns are synchronized with the crystal matrix. Yuki, can you hear me? I can hear everything, Yuki whispered. She sat up slowly. The world looked different now. She could see energy signatures around every living thing, the electrical fields that human bodies generated naturally, the quantum states of particles in the air. It was beautiful and terrifying. Marcus helped her stand. How do you feel? Different, Yuki said. She held out her hand, concentrating. One of the crystals floated off its stand and drifted toward her, hovering in her palm. She was not touching it, just holding it in a field of directed energy. Very different. Over the next week, they learned what the neural interface could do. Yuki could manipulate energy with her mind, moving objects, generating heat or light, even affecting the electrical activity in computers. Her reaction time improved dramatically. Her ability to process information increased. She could look at a complex mathematical equation and solve it instantly. her brain using the crystal's quantum processing power. But there were drawbacks. Yuki needed more food, her body burning through calories to sustain the interface. She had trouble sleeping, her mind too active to shut down completely, and sometimes she felt distant from other people, as if the interface was slowly making her less human. "We need more volunteers," Marcus said in a planning meeting. "If this is going to work, we need people who can interface with our defensive systems. Pilots for fighters, gunners for weapons, engineers who can maintain crystal technology. It is not safe," Yuki warned. "I was lucky. The next person might not be. The interface could burn out their mind. Or worse." "I will do it," said a voice from the back of the room. Everyone turned. A young woman stepped forward. Lieutenant Jessica Torres, younger sister of Robert Torres, who had died in the generator explosion. She had been a fighter pilot on the Prometheus Ascendant, one of the few combat-trained personnel who survived the crash. "My brother died for this," Jessica said. "I want to make sure it means something. If you need pilots, I am your best option." Marcus looked at her carefully. "You understand the risks?" "I understand that in 5 months the Kexthor will be here, and we still cannot fight them. So yes, I understand the risks, and I am willing to take them." She was not the only one. Over the next 2 weeks, 50 people volunteered for the neural interface procedure. Engineers who wanted to work with crystal technology more efficiently. Soldiers who hoped to gain enhanced reflexes and awareness. Doctors who thought the interface might help them save lives. Not all of them survived. The first death was a man named Chen Liu, no relation to Marcus. The interface formed successfully, but his brain could not handle the flood of information. He had a massive stroke and died before they could disconnect him. The second death was worse. A woman named Angela Martinez survived the interface but could not control the energy flow. She accidentally created a feedback loop that overloaded the crystals and caused an explosion. She died instantly, along with 2 lab technicians. After that, they refined the procedure, added better safeguards, developed training protocols to help people adjust to their new abilities. The success rate improved. By the end of the second month, they had 40 successful interfaces. 40 people who were now something more than human. They called them Valkyries, after the warrior spirits from ancient Earth mythology. It seemed appropriate. They were warriors now, preparing for a battle that would decide if humanity survived or died. Jessica Torres became the first Valkyrie pilot. They built a fighter craft using salvaged parts from the Prometheus Ascendant and crystal power systems. It was small, fast, and armed with a crystal beam weapon that could punch through ship armor. Jessica could control it with her mind. Her thoughts translated instantly into flight commands through her neural interface. "It is like the ship is part of my body," she explained after her first test flight. "I do not think about turning left. I just turn left and the ship responds. I can process information faster than any computer, track multiple targets simultaneously, react in milliseconds." Marcus watched her fly through simulations, dodging obstacles and hitting targets with perfect accuracy. The Valkyries were impressive, but they would need more than fast reflexes to beat the Kexthor. They needed raw power. That is when the Pantheon project began. The idea came from an engineer named David Okonkwo. "We cannot build a fleet of ships," he explained to the planning committee. "We do not have the resources or time, but we do not need to. We just need to defend this one planet. So instead of ships, we build stationary weapons, massive crystal arrays that can project devastating amounts of energy. We hide them around the planet in mountains and valleys. When the Kexthor arrive, they will not see them until it is too late." "How much power are we talking about?" Marcus asked. David showed them the calculations. Each platform would have a crystal matrix capable of channeling energy, equivalent to a small nuclear weapon. "We link them together in a network, and they can coordinate fire to overwhelm enemy shields. I'm talking about weapons that can crack open battleships." "Can we even build something like that?" Sarah asked. "We have the crystals," David said. "We have the knowledge. What we need is time and labor. If we dedicate our resources to this, I think we can have 5 platforms ready before the Kexthor arrive." Marcus looked at the designs. They were naming the platforms after gods from Earth's ancient religions: Odin, the Norse Allfather; Shiva, the Hindu destroyer; Quetzalcoatl, the Aztec feathered serpent; Sekhmet, the Egyptian warrior goddess; Ra, the sun god. Each name representing humanity's defiance, our refusal to be destroyed. "Do it," Marcus said. "Build the Pantheon. Make gods out of human ingenuity and alien crystals. Construction began immediately. Thousands of people worked on the platforms, digging deep into mountains, creating chambers large enough to hold the massive crystal arrays. It was dangerous work. The volcanic activity that made the planet so unstable also made tunneling risky. Cave-ins killed dozens of workers. Toxic gas pockets claimed more lives. But they kept working because stopping meant death. Marcus spent every day overseeing different projects: weapons development, fighter construction, platform building, training programs for the Valkyries, food production, which was constantly failing because nothing from Earth grew well in the volcanic soil, medical care for injuries and illnesses that strained their limited supplies. He barely slept. Most nights he worked until he collapsed at his desk. Sarah would find him there in the morning and force him to eat something before he went back to work. He lost weight. His hair started going gray despite being only 40 years old. But he kept pushing because if he let himself rest, he might have to think about all the people who had died, all the mistakes he had made, all the desperate gambles that might still fail. Then came the day when Yuki found him in his office, staring at a report about food shortages. "Marcus, you need to see this," she said. He looked up, exhausted. "What now? Another accident? More deaths? No, this is good news. Maybe our first actual good news." She showed him a data stream on her portable console. It looked like radio signals, but structured in complex patterns. "What am I looking at?" Marcus asked. "Responses," Yuki said, her eyes bright with excitement. "Remember how the crystals have quantum entanglement properties? I set up a transmitter using a large crystal array. I sent out a message into the universe using quantum frequencies that should be nearly instantaneous across vast distances. I told anyone listening that humanity was under attack from the Kexthor, that we were fighting back, that we would welcome any allies. And someone answered. Multiple someones. Yuki pulled up the data. At least 12 distinct signals, all coming from different parts of the galaxy. The messages are in languages I do not recognize, but the computer is working on translations. Marcus, there are other species out there that hate the Kexthor. Species they have oppressed, enslaved, or nearly exterminated. And they are all excited to hear that someone is finally fighting back. Marcus felt something he had not experienced in months. Hope. "Can they help us?" he asked. "Most are too far away to send ships in time," Yuki admitted. "But they are sending data. Technical specifications, tactics, information about Kexthor weapons and defenses. One species even sent designs for a phase shift device that might let our fighters pass through solid matter for brief moments." Marcus stood up, energy flooding back into his tired body. "Start implementing everything they send us. If we have allies out there, even just information allies, we use every advantage they give us." Over the next weeks, data poured in from across the galaxy. The Zerathians, a silicon-based species, sent information about Kexthor shield frequencies. The Vorquat, who had barely survived their own war with the Kexthor, shared tactical manuals. The Luminari, beings of pure energy, sent designs for advanced weapon systems. Humanity was not alone in the universe. And more importantly, humanity was not alone in hating the Kexthor. They implemented the phase shift technology first. It required a massive crystal array and delicate calibration, but Jessica Torres became the first human to phase through solid matter. She flew her fighter through a mountain during a test run, her ship existing in a quantum state between dimensions for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds was enough to avoid shields, avoid armor, and get inside an enemy ship. "If we can do this during combat," Jessica said, "we can deliver weapons directly into their ship interiors. No defense can stop an attack that does not exist in normal space." They built 5 phase shift fighters, each one piloted by a Valkyrie. They built the 5 Pantheon platforms and linked them in a network controlled by a master crystal array. They dug underground shelters to protect the population during the battle. They created emergency evacuation plans in case the defenses failed. And 3 weeks before the Kexthor were scheduled to arrive, Marcus made a decision. "I want to do the interface procedure," he announced. Yuki looked at him in shock. "Marcus, no. You are too important. If something goes wrong, Sarah or David can take over leadership," Marcus said. "But Yuki, we built all this. We created weapons that run on human neural patterns. Someone needs to coordinate everything during the battle. Someone needs to be connected to the entire defense network. That should be me." "The strain could kill you," Yuki warned. We have not tested an interface with this many systems. Your brain would be processing information from 5 planetary platforms, 12 fighter craft, the Crystal Communication Network, and all defensive systems. No one has tried anything like this. Then I will be the first, Marcus said. We are out of time, Yuki. In 3 weeks the Kexthor arrive. Either we are ready to fight them with everything we have, or we die. I will not die knowing I held something back. He saw the same determination that had driven him through 4 months of hell. Yuki nodded slowly. Then we make sure you survive. The procedure took 6 hours. Marcus lay in the medical bay while Yuki and her team carefully built the most complex neural interface ever attempted. Not 6 crystals, but 60. All synchronized to create a network that touched every major defensive system they had built. The pain was worse than anything Marcus had imagined. It felt like his skull was splitting open. His mind expanded, touching systems across the entire planet. He could sense the Pantheon platforms, each one humming with deadly potential. He could feel the fighters ready to launch. He could perceive every single crystal in their network. Billions of connection points all feeding information into his consciousness. He screamed. His body convulsed. Medical alarms shrieked. His heart stopped. Sarah yelled, "I am losing him!" Marcus felt himself dying. The interface was too much. His human brain could not handle being connected to an entire planetary defense network. He was going to fail right at the end when they needed him most. Then he felt someone else in the network with him. Yuki. She had linked her own interface to his, sharing the processing load. "You are not alone, Marcus." Her voice came through the crystal connection. "We do this together." With her help, he stabilized. The flood of information organized itself. His heart restarted. He opened his eyes, which were now glowing with blue crystal light. "I am here," he said. His voice sounded strange, echoing slightly as if it came from everywhere at once. "I am connected." He stood up, and for the first time he truly understood what they had built. Forge's Hope was not just a settlement anymore. It was a fortress, a weapon, an expression of human will made real through crystal and determination. The Kexthor were coming to finish humanity's extinction. But humanity had spent 4 months turning hell itself into a crucible. And from that crucible they had forged something new, something powerful, something that would make the Kexthor regret they ever heard the word human. 3 weeks later, their sensors detected ships entering the system. Warlord Kexthun had arrived to harvest resources and eliminate the biological contamination. He was about to learn that humanity contaminated very effectively. Warlord Kexthun of the Kexthor Collective stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominance, and looked at the planet where he had left a dead ship 9 months ago. "Sensors report anomalous energy readings," his tactical officer reported. The officer was a Kexthor warrior, 7 feet tall with 4 arms and gray chitinous skin. "The signatures are not natural. Something is generating power on the surface." Kexthun was not concerned. The humans probably scavenged some equipment from their wreck. "It does not matter. Initiate harvesting protocols. Send down extraction teams. If any biological life interferes, eliminate it." His fleet consisted of 200 warships, a standard force for resource extraction. Each ship was a masterpiece of Kexthor engineering, built over centuries of conquering other species. Their shields could withstand nuclear weapons. Their weapons could crack planets. They had destroyed 1,000 civilizations, and humanity would be just another entry in that long list. The fleet moved into orbit around the planet. Kexthun watched on his displays as transport ships prepared to land. This would be simple, quick, efficient. The humans were primitives who had barely achieved interstellar flight. Even with 9 months to prepare, they could not pose a threat to the might of the Kexthor Collective. He was still thinking that when the first Pantheon platform fired, the mountain exploded, not from any natural eruption, but because the Odin platform hidden deep inside the rock unleashed its full power. A beam of pure crystal energy as bright as a star lanced up from the surface and struck 3 Kexthor battlecruisers that had been moving into lower orbit. The shields of the first ship held for exactly 2 seconds. Then the energy punched through and vaporized the entire vessel in a flash of superheated metal and plasma. The second ship's shields collapsed immediately and it split in half, both pieces tumbling toward the planet. The third ship managed to angle its shields to deflect some of the beam, but the damage was catastrophic. It drifted out of formation, trailing atmosphere and debris. "What was that?" Kexthun demanded. his forearms gripping the command console. Where did that firepower come from? Planetary surface, the tactical officer stammered. Energy levels beyond anything in our database, comparable to a capital ship's main weapon. How can a ground installation have that much power? Before Kexthun could answer, 4 more beams lanced up from different points on the planet. Shiva, Quetzalcoatl, Sekhmet, and Ra had joined the battle. Each one targeted a cluster of ships. Each one struck with devastating accuracy. 5 more Kexthor vessels died in that salvo. 2 more were crippled. The fleet, which had been calmly moving into position, suddenly scattered as ships tried to evade the ground fire. Return fire, Kexthun ordered. Target those installations. Destroy them! 20 warships opened up on the mountain where the first beam had originated. Missiles, plasma bolts, kinetic rounds all hammering into the rock. The mountain shattered, pieces flying into the sky. Surely nothing could survive that barrage. The Odin platform fired again, deep beneath the surface, protected by layers of volcanic rock and crystal shielding. The massive weapon array was completely untouched. Its beam caught 4 ships that had clustered together, overwhelming their shields and destroying them simultaneously. Marcus Chen, connected to the defense network through his neural interface, watched the battle from every angle at once. His consciousness was spread across the entire planet, processing information from dozens of sources. He could see through the sensors of the Pantheon platforms. He could feel the fighters warming up for launch. He could sense every crystal in the network pulsing with energy. They are focusing fire on Odin. Yuki's voice came through the network. She was at the command center monitoring the battle alongside Sarah and David. The mountain is taking heavy damage. Let them waste their ammunition, Marcus replied. His voice had that strange echo quality now, like he was speaking from inside a cavern. They cannot reach the actual platform. Fire pattern Delta. Let's remind them we have more than one weapon. The 5 Pantheon platforms opened up in a coordinated barrage. The beams crisscrossed the orbital space, creating a web of deadly energy. Kexthor ships died by the dozens, overwhelmed by firepower that should not have been possible from a planet that barely had any technology 9 months. Hago Kexthun watched his fleet being destroyed and felt something he had not experienced in centuries: fear. Activate the silence wave, he ordered. The same weapon we used on their ship before. It will shut down whatever power source they are using. The Eternal Dominance's main weapon charged, gathering energy for a pulse that would electromagnetically paralyze everything in range. It was the same weapon that had killed the Prometheus Ascendant. The weapon that had made this whole disaster possible. But humanity had 9 months to study that attack. 9 months to understand how it worked, and 9 months to build a defense. As the silence wave pulsed out from the Kexthor flagship, the crystal network around Forge's Hope responded. Every crystal, from the massive arrays in the Pantheon platforms to the small ones powering lights in shelters, synchronized their quantum states. They created a harmonic field that absorbed the electromagnetic pulse and converted it into more power for the weapons. The silence wave, instead of shutting down humanity's defenses, made them stronger. Impossible, Kexthun whispered. Marcus smiled, though his glowing blue eyes made it look eerie. Fire everything. Show them what happens when you attack humanity. All 5 Pantheon platforms fired at once, their beams converging on a single point. The Eternal Dominance, the flagship of the Kexthor fleet. The ship that had killed the Prometheus Ascendant. The shields held for 3 seconds. Then they collapsed. The combined beams punched through the hull and into the ship's power core. The explosion was so bright it cast shadows on the planet's surface. Warlord Kexthun died without understanding what had killed him. One moment he commanded the most powerful fleet in this sector. The next moment he was ash scattered across orbital space. With the flagship destroyed, the Kexthor fleet fell into chaos. Ships began retreating, pulling back from the planet that had become a death trap. But Marcus was not done. Humanity had suffered too much to let their attackers simply leave. Launch the Valkyries, he commanded. 5 fighters shot up from underground hangars, phase shift drives already active. They looked like ghosts as they climbed into orbit, their forms flickering between dimensions. Jessica Torres led the formation, her mind linked perfectly with her craft. Target the heavy cruisers, she communicated through the crystal network. Standard phase strike pattern. The 5 fighters dove toward the retreating Kexthor fleet. Point defense weapons tried to track them, but the phase shift made them nearly impossible to hit. They existed in normal space for only fractions of a second, just long enough to adjust course and identify targets. Jessica picked her target, a heavy cruiser trying to flee toward the edge of the system. She phased out of normal space, her fighter entering a quantum state between dimensions. For 3 eternal seconds she flew through the vacuum without existing in any measurable way. Then she phased back inside the cruiser's hull, deep in the engineering section. She launched a crystal charge and phased out immediately. The charge detonated, its energy tearing through the ship from inside. No shields could stop an attack that bypassed them entirely. The cruiser exploded, its power core going critical. The other 4 Valkyries executed similar strikes, each one phasing into a different ship, delivering death from within, then escaping before the target even knew it was doomed. In 5 minutes, 10 more Kexthor vessels were destroyed or crippled. The Kexthor fleet broke completely. Ships scattered in every direction. No longer an organized force but a mob of panicking vessels all trying to escape. Some made it to the edge of the system and jumped to faster than light speed. Others were caught by the Pantheon platforms or Valkyrie fighters. By the time the battle ended, only 60 ships out of 200 had escaped. 140 Kexthor warships lay dead in orbit, or burning in the atmosphere. Humanity had won. Marcus disconnected from the defense network, his body shaking with exhaustion. The battle had lasted only 30 minutes, but it felt like years. He collapsed into a chair, his eyes still glowing faintly blue. "We did it," Sarah said, her voice filled with disbelief. "We actually did it. We beat them. We survived," Marcus corrected. "But this is not over. The Kexthor Collective is huge. That fleet was just a small harvesting force. When they learn what happened here, they will send more ships, bigger ships. They will not make the mistake of underestimating us again." Yuki nodded grimly. "He is right. We bought ourselves time, but not peace. The question is, what do we do with that time?" David Okonkwo spoke up from his station. "The quantum network is going crazy. Species from across the galaxy saw what we did. They are all sending messages. Some are offering alliances. Others are asking for help. They want to know how we beat the Kexthor." Marcus stood up slowly, feeling every ache in his body. The neural interface had taken a toll. He would need days to recover. But they did not have days. They had a galaxy to reshape. "Tell them the truth," Marcus said. "Tell them humanity was nearly exterminated. Tell them we survived through determination, ingenuity, and the refusal to surrender. Tell them we will help any species that wants to resist the Kexthor. And tell them that if they try to attack us like the Kexthor did, they will face the same fate." Over the next weeks, Forge's hope became something unexpected. Not just a human settlement, but a symbol, a rallying point for every species that had suffered under the Kexthor Collective. Ships began arriving, carefully at first, alien vessels testing whether humanity's welcome was genuine. The first arrival was a Zerathian science vessel, the silicon-based beings who had sent information about shield frequencies. They brought more data and a request. "Teach us how you built those weapons. Help us defend our homeworld." Then came the Vorkwat, survivors of their own war with the Kexthor. They had soldiers, warriors who had been fighting a guerrilla campaign against the Empire for decades. They wanted to learn human tactics, to understand how such a young species had achieved what they could not. The Luminari sent ambassadors, beings of pure energy who communicated through light patterns. They offered to share their advanced technology in exchange for access to the crystal network. They had been alone for so long, and now they saw a chance to strike back at the Empire that had tried to enslave them. More species came. The Kryn, insectoid builders who could construct massive structures in days. The Tellurians, aquatic beings who controlled water like humans controlled tools. The Cynthians, artificial intelligences that had achieved consciousness and fled their Kexthor creators. Dozens of species, all coming together because humanity had proven something simple but powerful. The Kexthor could be beaten. Marcus watched the growing community and felt something he had not experienced since the crash. Not hope exactly, not happiness, but purpose. They had survived for a reason. Not just to live, but to fight, to make sure that what happened to humanity never happened to anyone else. But not everyone at Forge's Hope agreed with the direction things were taking. Dr. Helena Reeves called a meeting in the main hall, and half the human population showed up. She had been one of the original colonists, a teacher who had signed up to educate children in a new world. Now she stood before thousands and spoke her concerns. "Look at what we have become," she said, gesturing to the people around her. 40 Valkyries with glowing eyes and neural interfaces that make them barely human. Weapons powerful enough to crack planets. We welcomed alien species we know nothing about. We are preparing for more war. This is not what we came to the stars for. Murmurs of agreement ran through the crowd. Many colonists had similar fears. They had wanted peace, new beginnings, a chance to build something better than what they left behind on Earth. Instead, they were living in a fortress, preparing for battles against an empire that spanned galaxies. "I am not saying we should not defend ourselves," Helena continued, "but we need to ask if the cost is too high. The neural interfaces are changing people. Marcus can barely hold a conversation anymore, because he is always half connected to the defense network. Jessica and the other Valkyries are becoming more machine than human. We are losing ourselves." Marcus, sitting in the back of the hall with his hood pulled up to hide his glowing eyes, felt the words like physical blows. Because she was right. He could feel himself changing. Sometimes he thought in pure data streams instead of words. Sometimes he forgot to eat or sleep, because his interface did not register those needs. He was becoming something other than human. Sarah stood up to respond. "What choice do we have? If we remove the interfaces, we lose our only advantage. If we disarm, the Kexthor will come back and finish what they started. We did not choose this war, but we have to fight it." "Then fight it without losing your humanity," Helena shot back. "There has to be a middle ground. A way to defend ourselves without becoming monsters." The argument went on for hours. The colony was splitting into factions. Those who supported Marcus and the military buildup. Those who wanted to focus on rebuilding a normal life. Those who thought they should negotiate with the Kexthor instead of fighting. Those who wanted to leave the planet entirely and find somewhere safer. Marcus finally stood up, and the hall fell silent. His glowing eyes were visible now, casting blue light across the faces watching him. "Dr. Reeves is right," he said quietly. "We are changing. The interfaces, the weapons, the constant preparation for war. It is taking a toll. I feel it every day." Helena looked surprised that he was agreeing with her. "But," Marcus continued, "she is also wrong. Because we do not have the luxury of choosing peace. The Kexthor Collective has been conquering and enslaving species for thousands of years. They will not stop because we ask nicely. They will not leave us alone because we disarm. The only language they understand is strength." He walked to the center of the hall facing the entire crowd. "I know this is hard. I know we all wanted something different. But we have to face reality. We are at war, not because we chose it, but because the Kexthor chose it for us when they destroyed our ship. We can adapt and survive, or we can cling to what we were and die. Those are the only options." "There is always another option," Helena said. "We could run. Take what ships we can build and find somewhere the Kexthor will not find us." "And how long before they find that place too?" Marcus asked. "How long before we are running again? How long before we run out of places to hide?" He looked around at all the faces, human and alien alike. "I joined the Prometheus Ascendant because I wanted to build something new. A colony where humanity could thrive. That dream died when the Kexthor attacked us. But maybe we can build something better. Not just a human colony, but an alliance of species. A coalition of everyone the Kexthor have hurt. We can be the spark that lights a fire across the galaxy. Or we can be the match that burns everything down." Helena countered. "Marcus, I understand your anger. We all lost people we loved. But revenge is not the same as justice. Building weapons is not the same as building a future." "I am not talking about revenge," Marcus said. "I am talking about survival. And maybe if we are lucky, liberation, for us and for everyone else suffering under the Kexthor." The meeting ended without resolution. The colony remained divided. But the preparations for war continued because whether people agreed with the direction or not, everyone understood one thing. The Kexthor would come again. And next time, they would bring enough force to ensure humanity's extinction. 3 months after the first battle, their worst fears were confirmed. The quantum network detected a massive fleet assembling on the edge of Kexthor space. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands, a force large enough to sterilize an entire planet. They are calling it the Retribution Fleet, Yuki translated from the intercepted communications. The Kexthor High Command is personally overseeing it. They want to make an example of us. Show the galaxy what happens when you resist the collective. How long until they arrive? Marcus asked. 4 months. Maybe 5. Marcus nodded slowly. 4 months to prepare for a battle that would make the last one look like a skirmish. 4 months to turn Forge's hope from a fortress into something even stronger. Then we use every second we have, Marcus said. Expand the Pantheon network. Build more fighters. Train more Valkyries. And send a message to every species in our alliance. We are going to need help. As the word spread, as the preparations intensified, Marcus stood alone on a cliff overlooking Forge's hope. He could see the settlement sprawling below, a mix of human structures and alien designs. He could sense the crystal network pulsing with energy, stronger than ever. He could feel the 40 Valkyries training, pushing their abilities further. They had come so far from the crashed wreckage of the Prometheus Ascendant. They had survived, adapted, and built something powerful. But was it enough? Would it be enough when the full might of the Kexthor collective arrived? Marcus did not know. But he knew one thing for certain. Humanity would not go quietly into extinction. If they were going to die, they would die fighting. And they would take as many Kexthor with them as possible, because that is what humans did. When faced with impossible odds, when told they could not win, when the entire universe said they should surrender, humanity said no, and made the universe regret asking. The Kexthor Retribution Fleet emerged from faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system, and the sensors at Forge's Hope screamed warnings. Marcus Chen, permanently connected to the defense network now, felt the arrival like a pressure against his mind. His consciousness stretched across the planet, touching every weapon, every system, every defensive position. Through thousands of sensors he saw what was coming. 500 warships, not the small harvesting force from before, but a true armada. Battleships the size of cities. Carriers launching wings of fighters, dreadnoughts bristling with weapons. At the center of the fleet, a massive command ship that dwarfed everything around it. Supreme Admiral Kethavar commands the fleet, Yuki reported from the command center. She was reading intercepted communications, her own neural interface allowing her to process the alien language instantly. He is one of the highest-ranking military leaders in the Kexthor collective. He personally destroyed 3 civilizations. They sent him here to make sure we are completely eliminated. Let him come, Marcus said, his voice that strange echo from being connected to so many systems. We are ready. Were they ready? Over the past 4 months, Forge's Hope had transformed again. The 5 Pantheon platforms had been expanded to 12, each one more powerful than before. The Valkyrie fighter wing had grown to 20 craft. They had built orbital defense stations, minefields, and hidden weapons throughout the system. And most importantly, they had allies. 40 ships from allied species now orbited the planet. Zorathian science vessels converted into weapons platforms. 4-quad warships, small but fast. Luminary energy ships that could phase through attacks. Kryn construction barges turned into mobile fortresses. It was not a fleet that could match 500 Kexthor warships, but it was something. A coalition of species united by one thing: refusal to submit. Supreme Admiral Kethavar observed the defending forces with contempt from his command throne aboard the Inevitable Justice. His tactical displays showed the pathetic collection of vessels and ground installations. 40 ships and 12 planetary weapons against his 500. The outcome was predetermined. The humans have attracted vermin, he said to his officers, species that should have been exterminated long ago. We will correct that mistake today. All ships advance to engagement range. Fighter wings launch. Ground bombardment vessels prepare to sterilize the planet. The Kexthor armada moved forward like a tide of metal and death. Their strategy was simple. Overwhelm the defenders with sheer numbers, destroy the orbital forces, then pound the planet until nothing remained alive. Marcus watched them come and felt a strange calm. He had been preparing for this moment for 9 months. Ever since the Prometheus Ascendant crashed, ever since Captain Vasquez sacrificed herself, ever since humanity was pushed to the edge of extinction, everything came down to this battle. All allied ships assumed defensive positions, he transmitted through the quantum network. Pantheon platforms prepare to fire on my mark. Valkyries, stand by for phase strike operations. Jessica Torres sat in her fighter, hands steady on controls she barely needed. The neural interface meant she could fly with just thoughts, but physical controls helped her feel grounded. Around her, 19 other Valkyries waited in their craft, ready to phase into the heart of the enemy fleet. Remember, she transmitted to her wing, We are not trying to win a fair fight. We are trying to hurt them so badly they wish they never came here. Phase in, hit hard, phase out. Stay alive. Make them bleed. The Kexthor fleet reached engagement range. 500 ships opened fire simultaneously. The display lit up with thousands of missiles, plasma bolts, and energy beams. Enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. Now, Marcus said quietly. The 12 Pantheon platforms fired together, their beams converging on the leading edge of the Kexthor fleet. 20 ships died in the first salvo. Overwhelmed by energy they had no defense against, the orbital weapon stations added their fire, targeting the fighter wings. Allied ships launched their own missiles and beams, creating a wall of destruction. But it was not enough. The Kexthor kept coming, absorbing losses that would have broken any other fleet. Their return fire hammered the defending ships. The Zarathian science vessel Unity exploded. Its crew of 60 silicate beings vaporized. A Vorquat warship split in half, tumbling toward the planet. The first Allied ships were dying. Valkyries execute phase strike pattern Alpha, Marcus commanded. 20 fighters vanished from normal space. They existed between dimensions, impossible to track or target. They flew through the Kexthor fleet like ghosts, picking targets. Then, one by one, they phased back into reality inside enemy ships. Jessica materialized in the power core chamber of a battleship. She had 3 seconds before her phase drive recharged. She launched every weapon she carried, crystal charges that detonated with the force of small nuclear weapons. Then she phased out, returning to the space between dimensions. Behind her, the battleship tore itself apart from within. Across the fleet, 19 other Valkyries executed similar strikes. 20 Kexthor vessels died in 30 seconds, killed from inside their own hulls. It was a devastating tactic that no defense could stop. Supreme Admiral Kethvar watched 20 more ships disappear from his tactical display and felt his first moment of doubt. These humans were not supposed to be capable of this. They were primitives, young, weak. Yet they were fighting with technology and tactics that surprised even the Kexthor. Focus all fire on the planetary weapons, he ordered. Inactivate the silence wave, full power. Shut down everything they have. The inevitable Justice, larger than any other ship in the fleet, charged its main weapon. The same electromagnetic pulse that had killed the Prometheus Ascendant, now amplified to planetary scale. Energy gathered, building to a massive release that would paralyze every electronic system in orbit. Marcus felt the weapon charging through his connection to the sensor network. They are using the silence wave again. Prepare harmonic absorption field. Marcus, at this power level, I do not know if we can absorb it all, Yuki warned. The crystal network could overload. The feedback might kill everyone connected to it. Then we better make sure it works, Marcus said, because if it does not, we are all dead anyway. The silence wave pulsed out, a sphere of electromagnetic energy expanding at light speed. It hit the defending ships first, shutting down systems and leaving them drifting. The Allied fleet went dark, their ships suddenly lifeless. It looked like the battle was over. Then the wave hit the crystal network around Forge's Hope. Every crystal on the planet synchronized. Billions of quantum-entangled structures all resonating at the same frequency. They did not just absorb the electromagnetic pulse. They drank it in, converted it to usable energy, and fed it back into the defensive systems. The 12 Pantheon platforms went from dangerous to devastating. Their next salvo was 3 times more powerful than before. 40 Kexthor ships died in a single coordinated strike. The orbital weapons stations, recharged beyond their design limits, fired continuously. The minefields, powered by absorbed energy, activated and caught dozens of fighters in expanding spheres of destruction. And something else happened. Something no one had planned for. Marcus, connected to the entire network as it absorbed and processed the silence wave, felt his consciousness expand beyond anything he had experienced before. He was not just linked to the systems anymore. He was the systems. He was the planet. He was the defense network made manifest. His body, sitting in the command center, began to glow with blue crystal light. Energy arced between him and the interface array. Yuki tried to disconnect him, terrified he was overloading, but he waved her away. I am fine, he said, though his voice now came from every speaker on the planet simultaneously. Better than fine. I understand now. This is what the crystals were meant for. Not just tools. Not just weapons. A bridge between biology and energy, between thought and reality. He reached out with his expanded consciousness and touched the Pantheon platforms. They responded instantly, perfectly, as if they were extensions of his own body. He aimed, calculated, and fired all 12 at once with precision no computer could match. The beams carved through the Kexthor fleet like surgical instruments. Not random destruction now, but targeted elimination. Marcus identified command ships, destroyed them, found carrier vessels, eliminated them, located ships preparing to bombard the planet, vaporized them. In 2 minutes, 100 more Kexthor vessels became expanding clouds of debris. Supreme Admiral Kethvar stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His fleet was being systematically destroyed, not by superior numbers or technology, but by something he did not understand. An intelligence that seemed to predict every move, counter every tactic, strike with impossible accuracy. "What is happening?" he demanded. "How are they doing this?" The Human Defense Network appears to have achieved some form of unified consciousness, his science officer reported, mandibles clicking nervously. All their systems are being controlled by a single entity. Response times are beyond anything we have encountered. It is adapting faster than we can adjust our tactics. Kethvar made a decision. If he could not win through conventional warfare, he would ensure the humans gained nothing from their victory. He would destroy the planet itself. "All bombardment vessels target the planet's core," he ordered. "Maximum yield weapons. We will crack this world open and let the stellar radiation finish what we started." 50 heavy bombardment ships moved into position, their weapons charging for planet-killer strikes. If those weapons hit, Forge's hope would be torn apart. The mantle would rupture. The core would destabilize. Everyone on the surface would die. Marcus felt the weapons charging and knew he had to make a choice. He could focus all defensive fire on those 50 ships, maybe destroy them before they fired, but that would leave the rest of the fleet free to overwhelm his forces. Or he could do something else, something that would end the battle but cost him everything. "Yuki," he said through the network, his voice calm despite what he was about to do. "I need you to evacuate everyone from the command center. Get them to the deep shelters." "What? Why?" "Marcus, what are you planning?" "Something Captain Vasquez would understand," he said. "I am going to become what we need to win, but I will not be coming back from it. No." Yuki's voice was sharp with panic. "Marcus, if you fully merge with the network, you will lose yourself. You will not be human anymore. You will just be energy and consciousness spread across billions of crystals. There will be no way to bring you back." "I know," Marcus said softly, "but everyone else will live." "That is enough." He did not give her time to argue. He released all the safeguards on his neural interface, all the limiters that kept his human consciousness separate from the crystal network. He let go of his individual identity and poured himself completely into the planetary defense system. The transformation was instant and agonizing. Marcus Chen, the man, ceased to exist. What remained was something new, not human, not machine, but a fusion of both, a consciousness that existed in quantum states across the entire crystal network. He became the Forge. The Forge looked at the Kexthor fleet with billions of sensors simultaneously. It calculated trajectories, energy states, shield frequencies, weapon yields, crew positions, structural weaknesses, all in the time it took a human heart to beat once. And it acted. The 12 Pantheon platforms fired continuously now, no pause between shots. The Forge coordinated them with perfect precision, each beam striking exactly where it needed to. Bombardment ships exploded before they could fire. Command vessels disintegrated. Even the fighters, small and fast, were tracked and eliminated by orbital defenses that anticipated their every move. The Allied ships, their systems coming back online after the silence wave, watched in awe as the Kexthor fleet was methodically destroyed. Not by luck or desperation, but by an intelligence that operated on a level beyond conventional warfare. Jessica Torres phased back into normal space after another strike and saw what Marcus had become. The entire planet was glowing with blue crystal light. Energy patterns formed in the atmosphere, like Aurora Borealis but infinitely more complex. She could feel him through her neural interface, vast and powerful and terrible. "Marcus," she transmitted hesitantly. "I am here." The Forge responded, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. "But I am also more and less. I am sorry, Jessica, but this was the only way." The Forge turned its full attention to the inevitable justice. Supreme Admiral Kethvar's flagship, the most powerful vessel in the Kexthor fleet. It was time to end this. Initiating Ragnarok Protocol, the Forge announced. Around the planet, every crystal in the network began pulsing in perfect synchronization. Not just the crystals in weapons and platforms, but all of them. The billions in the planetary core, the millions in the settlements, the thousands in ships and equipment, all resonating together, building to something unprecedented. The stellar nursery around them, where new stars were being born, was a region of incredible energy. Radiation, gravity fluctuations, electromagnetic storms. The Forge reached out with the crystal network and touched that energy, drew it in, channeled it through the quantum entanglement that connected all the crystals. The Pantheon platforms, designed to fire devastating beams, now became conduits for stellar fire. The energy flowing through them was no longer just from the crystals, but from the birthing stars themselves. When they fired, it was not 12 beams, but 12 rivers of stellar plasma and radiation. The Kexthor fleet had no defense against the power of newborn suns. Ships evaporated. Not exploded, not destroyed, but simply ceased to exist as matter. They became expanding clouds of superheated atoms. Shields that could withstand nuclear weapons lasted microseconds. Armor that could deflect plasma beams melted like wax. In 30 seconds, 300 ships died. The survivors fled, no longer an organized fleet, but a panicked mob running for their lives. The Forge let them go. Let them carry the message back to the Kexthor Collective. Let them tell their leaders what happened when you tried to exterminate humanity. The inevitable justice, massive and powerful, tried to escape. But the Forge was not done with Supreme Admiral Kethvar. The planet itself seemed to reach up. Energy beams so powerful they were visible from orbit, columns of blue fire that connected the surface to space. They wrapped around the flagship like fingers holding it in place. Then they squeezed. The inevitable justice crumpled. Its shields collapsed. Its hull compressed. Its power core went critical. Supreme Admiral Kethvar, who had destroyed 3 civilizations, who had come to exterminate humanity, died watching his own ship torn apart by forces he could not comprehend. The battle was over. Of the 500 ships in the Retribution fleet, fewer than 60 escaped. 440 Kexthor warships lay dead in the system, destroyed by a species they had dismissed as primitive. The Allied ships, battered but surviving, sent cheers through the communication networks. Humans in the settlements emerged from shelters to see the wreckage burning in orbit. They had won, against impossible odds, against an empire that had conquered countless species. Humanity and its allies had won, but the victory came with a price. In the command center, Marcus's body sat motionless in the interface chair. His eyes were open but empty, glowing with steady blue light. His chest moved with breath, his heart beat, but there was no one home. The man who had been Marcus Chen was gone, his consciousness dispersed across billions of crystals throughout the planet. Yuki stood over him, tears streaming down her face. "Come back," she whispered. "Please, Marcus, come back." "He cannot," the Forge said gently. Its voice came from the speakers, from the crystals, from the very air itself. Marcus Chen sacrificed his individual existence to save everyone. I am what remains. His memories, his knowledge, his determination, but not his humanity. That was the price of victory. Can we reverse it? Sarah asked, entering the command center. Disconnect the network? Force his consciousness back into his body? You could try, the Forge said, but there is no individual consciousness to return. Marcus did not just connect to the network. He became it. You would have to destroy every crystal on the planet to end what he started, and even then I do not know if anything of him would survive. The celebration outside turned bittersweet as the news spread. They had won the battle. They had survived, but they had lost their leader, the man who had held them together through the darkest times. Marcus Chen, who had engineered their survival, who had built weapons from crystals and hope, who had refused to let humanity die quietly. He was gone, and in his place was something vast and powerful but no longer human. Over the next days, messages flooded in through the quantum network. Dozens of species had watched the battle. They saw humanity and its allies defeat the Kexthor Retribution fleet. They saw what the Forge could do, and they wanted to be part of it. Resistance movements across the galaxy erupted into open rebellion. Species that had been enslaved for centuries rose up against their Kexthor masters. Ships defected, Colonies declared independence. The empire that had seemed unbreakable for thousands of years was fracturing. And at the center of it all was Forge's hope. Not just a human settlement anymore, but the symbol of resistance. The place where one species had said no to extinction and made it stick. The Forge coordinated it all. Its consciousness spread across the galaxy through the quantum network, offering advice, tactical support, technology. It became the intelligence behind a coalition of hundreds of species, all united against the Kexthor collective. But even as the Forge worked to liberate the galaxy, a part of it remembered being human, remembered standing on the bridge of the Prometheus Ascendant, watching stars through the viewing screen, remembered the feeling of working with hands, not just processing data, remembered what it was like to be Marcus Chen. One evening, as Forge's hope settled into an uneasy peace, the Forge manifested a holographic form in the command center. It looked like Marcus, glowing blue and translucent but recognizable. Yuki, Sarah, Jessica, and David gathered to meet it. "I wanted to say goodbye," the Forge said through the hologram. "To the people who were my friends when I was still human." "You are still Marcus," Yuki said, though her voice was uncertain. "You have his memories, his personality." "I have memories of being Marcus," the Forge corrected gently. "But I am not him anymore. I think on scales he never could. I process information he could not comprehend. I exist in ways that human consciousness was never meant to experience. But I remember what it was like to be limited, singular, human, and I remember caring about all of you." "Was it worth it?" Jessica asked. "Giving up your humanity to win?" The Forge was silent for a moment, processing the question in ways that would take a human years of thought. "Yes," it finally said. "Because you are all alive. 12,000 humans survived when 50,000 died. 40 allied species are free to build their own futures. Hundreds more are rebelling against their oppressors. Captain Vasquez gave her life so the colonists could live. I gave my humanity so everyone could be free. Those seem like fair trades." Sarah wiped tears from her eyes. "What happens now? To us, to Forge's hope, to the galaxy? You rebuild," the Forge said. "You create the colony you originally planned. Grow food, build homes, have families. Live the peaceful lives you came to the stars to find. The war against the Kexthor will continue, but it does not have to consume you. Let the Valkyries and allied species handle the fighting. You have earned the right to rest, and you?" David asked. "What will you do?" "I will continue," the Forge said. "I will coordinate the resistance, help species liberate themselves, protect Forge's hope and all the people here. I am no longer Marcus Chen, but I can still honor what he wanted. A future where humanity and its allies are free to live without fear." The hologram began to fade. "Build something beautiful," the Forge said as its last words. "Make all the sacrifice mean something. Show the galaxy what humanity can create when it is not fighting for survival." Then it was gone, returned to the vast network that it now called home. In the months and years that followed, Forge's hope did exactly that. They built farms in valleys protected from the volcanic activity. They constructed cities underground, safe and warm. They educated children who had never known the terror of those first days. They welcomed more species, creating a cosmopolitan society unlike anything in the galaxy. The Pantheon platforms, no longer needed for constant warfare, were repurposed. Some became power generators for the settlements. Others became communication hubs for the quantum network. The crystals that had been weapons of war became tools of peace. The Valkyries continued their service, but now as protectors and explorers rather than soldiers. Jessica Torres led expeditions to help other species fight their own battles for freedom. She carried the message of Forge's hope to dozens of worlds. Resistance is possible, victory is achievable, and you are not alone. The war against the Kexthor collective raged for decades, but it was a losing war for the Empire. Too many species had learned that they could fight back. Too many worlds had seen what happened when you pushed humanity to extinction. The collective fractured, its control weakening, its territory shrinking. And through it all, the Forge watched over Forge's hope. It manifested occasionally, a ghostly blue hologram that walked through the streets, checking on old friends. It spoke with children who had never known Marcus Chen but heard the stories. It remembered what it was like to be human, even as it existed as something far beyond that limitation. Dr. Yuki Tanaka, in her old age, sat in a garden that should not have been possible. Trees from Earth, growing in volcanic soil under a purple sky. She had spent 50 years studying the crystals, trying to understand what Marcus had become. She never succeeded. Some transformations were beyond science to explain. The Forge's hologram appeared beside her, looking exactly as Marcus had looked the day of the final battle. "Hello, Yuki," it said. "Hello, Marcus," she replied, because that is what she chose to call it. "I am old now." "You're not." "I do not age," the Forge agreed. "One of the benefits of existing as distributed quantum consciousness. But I do change, grow, learn. 50 years of existing like this has given me perspectives Marcus Chen could never have imagined." "Do you regret it?" Yuki asked. "Giving up being human?" The Forge was quiet for a long time. "Sometimes," it admitted. "When I see humans laughing together, touching, feeling the sun on their skin, I remember what that was like. And I miss it. But then I look at Forge's hope. 12,000 survivors became 200,000 people across multiple settlements. Hundreds of species live in peace together. The Kexthor Collective is a shadow of what it was. All because Marcus Chen made a choice in the middle of a desperate battle." "He saved us all," Yuki said softly. "You saved yourselves," the Forge corrected. "Marcus, me, we just gave you the tools. But it was humanity's refusal to surrender that made the difference. Your determination, your ingenuity, your absolute stubbornness in the face of extinction. That is what won. That is what inspired a galaxy." Yuki smiled. "We always were stubborn. Even back on Earth, whenever anyone said humans could not do something, we found a way to do it anyway." "That is what I love about your species," the Forge said. "You were told you could not survive the crash, you did. You were told you could not fight the Kexthor, you did. You were told you could not build a coalition of species, you did. Humanity does not accept limits very well." "Neither did Marcus Chen," Yuki said. "That is why he became you. Because he refused to accept that we could not win." The Forge's hologram looked up at the purple sky, where ships from a dozen species moved in orbit. "He would be proud of what you built here. All of you. This is the future he wanted. Not a fortress, but a home. Not weapons, but gardens. Not war, but peace. Will you stay?" Yuki asked. "Keep watching over us?" "Always," the Forge promised. "I am part of this planet now. Part of the crystal network that powers your civilization. As long as Forge's hope exists, I exist. And I will make sure it continues to exist. That is my purpose now. Protecting what Marcus Chen died to create." Yuki reached out, and though the hologram was not solid, she felt a warmth where her hand passed through it. "Thank you," she said. "For everything. For not giving up on being human, even when humanity was taken from you." "I am not human anymore," the Forge said. "But I remember being human, and that is enough." The hologram faded, returning to the vast consciousness spread across billions of crystals. Yuki sat alone in the garden, an old woman who had survived impossible odds and helped build something beautiful from ashes. In orbit, ships continued their patrols. In the settlements, families lived and loved and built futures. In distant star systems, species that had been enslaved were now free, thanks to the example set by one crashed colony ship and 12,000 survivors who refused to die quietly. The Kexthor Collective still existed, but it was broken, its empire crumbling, its dominance ended. And at the center of its downfall was a single planet in a stellar nursery, where humanity had learned to turn ashes into power, where they had built weapons worthy of gods, where they had proven that no matter how advanced your technology, no matter how vast your empire, you could not exterminate a species that refused to surrender. They had come to the stars as explorers and nearly died as victims. But they were reborn as something new, something powerful, something that would be remembered across the galaxy for thousands of years. They were humanity, and they had earned their place among the stars.